Tuesday, October 20th, 2020 electronic meeting of the Ann Arbor Parks Advisory Commission. This meeting is held electronically to promote public health and safety due to the COVID-19 virus and to comply with orders issued by the governor, the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, and the Washtenaw County Health Department. We intend to conduct this meeting similarly to an in-person meeting. However, please be patient if there are technical issues, which there may be. Public comment will be via telephone only. To speak during any of the public comment opportunities, please call toll-free 877-853-5247 or 888-788-0099 and enter the meeting ID 960-1440-5161. This information is also available on the published agenda in the public notices section of the city website and on the broadcast of this meeting on CTN channel 16, AT&T channel 99, and online at www.a2gov.org/watch-CTN. Roll call. Kristen, could you please call the roll?
Yes. Commissioner Marsan.
Here, present.
Commissioner Skylus.
Here.
Commissioner Kraut. Commissioner Apple. Okay. Julie's coming in just a second. Commissioner London.
Here.
Commissioner Ramaswamy.
Oh. Here.
Commissioner Borgsdorf.
Here.
Commissioner Morrison.
Here.
And Councilmember Hayner.
Here.
And Councilmember Grand.
Here.
Great, you have a quorum.
Thanks, Kristen. And everyone might have probably already noticed, but Colin is not with us today. So Kristen is doing things like calling the roll, and we also have staff support from Derek Delacourt and Scott Spooner with us today. So thanks for joining us. Item 3, approval of the agenda. Everyone has the agenda in their packet. Or is there any additions or corrections to the agenda? Okay, seeing none, moving on to item 4, first public comment. This is an opportunity for persons to speak for up to 3 minutes about any parks related item. To comment, please state your name and address for the record. Public comment will be made by phone at the number appearing in the published agenda and what I mentioned before. If you are interested in speaking at this time, please call the meeting with the information provided. City staff will select callers that have raised their hand one by one using the last 3 digits of your phone number. In order to electronically raise your hand to speak, please press *9 on your phone. You will hear an automated announcement that the host is allowing you to speak. When speaking, please move to a quiet area and mute any television or background sounds so that we may hear you clearly. Kristen, is anyone on the line to speak today?
There is a caller. Let's wait just a moment and see if they indicate.
Okay.
Yes, there is a caller. All right, caller ending in 341. You will have 3 minutes to speak.
Hi, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Hi, my name is Debbie Hamilton. I'm here to voice my enthusiastic support for the Northside Food Forest. I co-own Sassafras Pet Collective, which is an Ann Arbor business with 5 to 6 employees. I've lived on the north side for 3 years, and I've worked in Ann Arbor for 5 years. The Food Forest is an easy biking distance for me, and being able to bike to join in a community food effort, which is more collaborative than gardens where each person has their own plot. So those are also wonderful. Being able to bike to the Food Forest is a huge hope for me in this trying time. I'm looking forward to learning more about permaculture while building community and growing food together. As many indoor community engagement opportunities are no longer accessible, the Northside Food Forest would fill a large gap in my life, and I believe for many of my neighbors. When I share about the project with friends, the response is always really positive and curious. And on a deeper level, I think the food forest is an exercise in hope. I think everyone here will look back in the years to come and tell our children about this time when there's wildfires raging, and hardship and isolation and violence around. But in our community, we found a way to come together to create a food forest to care for each other in the earth. And I think we'll tell that story with pride and conviction about what it teaches our children. Again, I think this food forest project is an exercise in hope, and that requires courage. And I hope you'll join me in supporting the food forest and voting yes for it.
Okay, thank you for calling in today. Kristen, do we have any other callers at this time?
No other callers.
Okay, thank you. Just so everyone knows, there will be a second opportunity for public comment at the end of this meeting. Moving on to item 5, approval of the minutes. They were the September 15th PAC meeting minutes were included in your packet. Are there any additions or corrections or a motion to approve?
Right over, they look good to me. I'd move their approval.
Thank you.
Second.
Okay, motion by Steve, seconded by Rachel. Any discussion? All right, seeing none, all in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? All right, minutes are approved. Thank you. Item 6, presentations. Today we have Scott Spooner joining us to give us a presentation on park operations.
Hello. Do we have the presentation ready to go, or do I need to share it from my screen?
You could share it from your screen.
Okay.
You should be able to have screen sharing.
Okay. So can you see that?
Yes.
Okay.
Scott, have you shared your audio along with the presentation?
Maybe not. There we go.
The park operations team is located in the Wheeler Service Center, which is on Stone School Road in southern Ann Arbor, near the airport. Depending on the time of year, we have between 20 and 30 staff, 15 of which are full-time, including 2 supervisors who oversee the day-to-day duties of the rest of the crew. Our job in park operations is to take care of the parks. We have over 160 parks in the system. That encompasses over 2,100 acres. The parks in Ann Arbor feature playgrounds, baseball and softball fields, soccer fields, pools, tennis courts, basketball courts, canoe and kayak liveries, ice rinks, disc golf courses, dog parks, a dirt bike course, a skate park, and 2 golf courses. The park facilities, such as the pools, liveries, and golf courses, usually have a supervisor who is there on a day-to-day basis. For the other parks and amenities, like those highlighted here, park operations staff are the only staff that might regularly get to a park. One of the biggest jobs we have in park operations is mowing. With over 160 parks, it takes us 2 weeks to get around to every park. We usually start with one of our 3 large mowers. They'll go in and hit the big areas. And then one of the 4 crews of smaller mowers, along with weed whips and blowers, will go in and mow around trees and other obstacles and clean up the park. Sometimes this can take a day or 2 between the big mower and the smaller mower getting in. The park operations crew can also do small construction projects. One of the biggest projects we've done recently was the Gallup Livery dock rebuild. The dock was over 20 years old and was starting to show its age. We completely removed all the old wood and put in new supports and deck boards. Over 200 feet of dock was replaced. This work had to take place over the winter when the livery was closed. In the spring, we were ready to open. There are 81 playgrounds in Ann Arbor, most of which have an engineered wood safety service called FIBAR, which is basically wood mulch. Others have a more expensive surface called poured in place or PIP. This rubberized PIP is more expensive but lasts longer than the FIBAR. One of the big problems with FIBAR is its longevity. Usually we can expect it to last 3 to 7 years, depending on the amount of sun, ground moisture, and other factors. One of those factors is weeds. As the mulch breaks down, it becomes more like soil and becomes a good environment for weeds to prosper. This is made worse by the fact that we don't use herbicides around playgrounds. In general, we don't use much fertilizer or pesticides in parks at all. Mostly our fertilizer and pesticide use is limited to fields we rent out to organize sports such as soccer or softball. The only real solution is hand weeding. In this, we get a lot of help from Give 365. They organize volunteer work days to pull the weeds in the playgrounds. When that gets to be too much, we can replace the FIBAR and the weed barrier that's underneath. In this slide, you can see one of the places where we've just recently done that. This is Huron Highlands. We've scraped away all the old mulch, and now we're starting to put down mulch and the new weed barrier, which you can see on the right-hand side. And here it is after it's all done and ready to open. When the weather turns colder, we still have a lot to do in the parks. Here the crew's putting up the boards for the outdoor ice rink at Northside. We have 3 outdoor ice rinks that we put in every winter when the weather cooperates. One at Northside, one at Burns, one at Allmendinger. And with the colder weather comes snow. We do a lot of snow removal in the parks as well. This is one of our zero-turn mowers that we use to normally mow the soccer and baseball fields. We take the mower off and put on a cab as well as the treads. This enables us to get down paths that the bigger trucks can't get. Another activity we do in the fall and winter is pruning trees. This tree in Scheffler Park has a lot of dead wood. and kind of looks just bad. After our crew went in, you can see all of the dead wood is gone, and the tree looks much better. Because we can't get into every park every day, one of the best tools for learning about problems in the parks is A2Fixit. By going to the website or using the app, residents can report problems they see. Staff check these reports every day, and it's a great way to get extra eyes and ears in the parks. Thank you for watching this brief introduction to park operations and maintenance. We strive to maintain excellent parks and beautiful spaces while providing safe and welcoming environments for all the citizens of Ann Arbor.
That's all I have. If you have any questions.
Thank you, Scott. Any questions about park operations? Yeah, Jeff.
Thanks. Just a couple comments. Thanks for that presentation. And also thanks for the work up at Huron Highlands. I know Derek's listening on this too, and I was just getting nonstop communication from the residents about that. I went out there and pulled a bunch of weeds myself and so on, and then it was examined and determined that it was one of those situations where it had just got beyond. And so
Yeah.
I really appreciate the work you guys did out there. I know the neighborhood does too. That park's really integral to that neighborhood, and so that's much appreciated. And then I also just wanted to say, I think you guys have 3 dog parks now. It said 2 in the thing, but don't we have 3? They count Olson as an actual dog park.
Olson and Broadway are the 2 dog parks, and then Swift Run is jointly operated with Washtenaw County.
Oh, that's a joint operation because it's okay. All right.
So 2.5 dog
right.
parks.
Okay. Thank you.
Ruth, yeah.
Hi, Scott. So I know that historically some of the paths in the parks have been maintained through the winter,
Mhm.
and some of them have not. And I'm kind of anticipating, because people are trying to social distance and seem to be using the parks a lot more, that there may be more need for maintenance of paths this winter. And I wonder if you've thought about that and if plans are any different or if they could be.
I haven't thought about that, but we can always look at any particular parks in that you have concerns about. We have everything in a map that's on the guys' iPads, and they go around and they just follow the map. But we can easily update that and get other paths that need to be looked at in the winter added to that. So
Okay, well then that would be my recommendation. I'm not asking with any particular path in mind. Just
Okay.
I expect that people are going to be wanting to walk on ice-free paths probably more than they have in the past.
probably
Thank
I'll
you.
look into it.
Thank you.
Scott, is the path clearing similar to how mowing is handled, where it's a rotating basis?
No, we try to get out there as soon as possible. But with that being said, we also do some sidewalks and other areas that are in the downtown district. And depending on how much snow it is and what kind of snow event it is, we may save some of the interior paths on the parks until after it's completely done, so that we get those more high priority areas done.
Other questions or comments? Yeah, Jeff.
Thanks again. So for the a park's a park no matter where it sits, right? So if we get a big snow event, does Parks have to go down and do the square in front of Kemp House, Liberty Plaza, that corner and so on, or because it's downtown and there's overlap with DDA Parks, like who's responsible for when those things overlap like that?
Well, usually it's easier for us to do those areas because we're out with that equipment. And just depending on where the path is, if it's not actually a park, we charge our time to a different fund. But our guys are out there and they have a route. So, 70% of their route might be in parks and 25% might be in right of ways. We also clear like the refuge islands, like on Stadium, and the crosswalks. Some of those. So 25% might be that, and then another 5% might be downtown. So they go around and hit those areas as they see them, but we have a formula worked out to how it gets charged.
And then it's the same, like, so you guys have your own forestry folks, or does that overlap? Like, we approved a forestry thing last night, and is that affect you, or you guys have your own forestry people?
We have some people that used to work in forestry that can still do some forestry stuff. And then we also have a contract with Davy
Oh,
for
okay.
routine parks pruning. And then depending on the situation, we can also have forestry from Public Works do something. If it's too big for us and it's kind of there's a rush on it, there's some sort of immediacy that needs to be addressed, we can ask forestry to do it and they can go out and do it immediately.
All right, thanks.
Mike.
This is more of a big picture question, but I'm wondering, if you had a magic wand, what would help you to make some of this routine maintenance more efficient for you? And I ask this based on hearing some lamentations about folks when the Wheeler Service Center opened up, because it was so far on one corner of town that suddenly it became a lot more difficult to do things on the other side of town. So I'm wondering if that still holds, or if there is something that could help you to make the mowing and the snow work easier for you.
No, I mean, instead of having a centralized location, having the Wheeler Center on the southern end of town it can make some things a little more difficult, but I think we've had enough time to adjust and we know exactly what's going to happen, and we've adjusted to that. During the winter, we do stockpile some salt at 721 North Main, the old Fleet building, in that, well, not in the building, but in the parking lot. And we can actually go there and fill up our salt spreaders from there, especially not necessarily with the trucks, but with the smaller equipment. We can fill up there so we don't have to go all the way back to the southern, back to the Wheeler Center to fill up. So I think we've got a handle on it pretty good.
Any other questions or comments for Scott? All right. Thank you for that presentation and for everything that you and your team do. Keep our parks as great as they are.
No, thank you.
Thanks for joining us. Moving along in the agenda, item 7, reports. We actually do not have any reports today. Since Colin is not with us, we'll hear a report from him next time. And we don't currently have a spot filled for RAC. So we're going to skip ahead to item 8, new business. And first up, we have a resolution to approve reconfiguring the Burns Park tennis courts from 4 tennis courts to 3 tennis courts and 2 pickleball courts. And I believe Adam is joining us to discuss with us. Hi, Adam.
Hi, guys. Thanks for
Hi.
having me today. Let me share my screen here. Can you guys see the screen?
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, so today I'd like to talk to you guys. I've presented this, and I think Hillary did in my place last meeting about adding pickleball to Burns Park. So what we're asking for is a resolution to approve reconfiguring it from 4 tennis courts to 3 tennis courts and 2 pickleball courts. I'll run through this presentation real quick and just to refresh your memory. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. So the existing Burns Park, the court, it needs to be resurfaced and repaired. And so resurfacing it will extend the life 5 to 7 years. And we've had several requests to add pickleball to somewhere in this area of the city. And so this gives us a chance to do that if we want. Right now, there are 6 dedicated pickleball courts, all at Leslie Park, and those were installed in 2018. And for your reference, we have 25 dedicated tennis courts at 13 different parks around the city. So we submitted a survey and we advertised it through our social media elements next door, Facebook. And then we also mailed out flyers to all residents within a quarter mile. We left it open for about 3 weeks and asked residents to vote on one of 3 different options. We received 219 responses, which was really, really well done. Was really happy with the turnout. In terms of the courts, we asked residents to vote on either leaving it as is, which is option A, that would be 4 tennis courts. Option B would be 4 tennis courts and then overstriping 2 pickleball courts. And option C would be 3 tennis courts, removing one of them and adding 2 dedicated pickleball courts. So just to look to enlarge option A here, this is the current configuration at Burns Park, and it would not have any pickleball. Option B, you can see you would have still your 4 tennis courts. They'd all be painted as they are now, but you would add striping on top of those for 2 of pickleball courts. And one of the downsides of this is there would not be permanent nets installed. So people would have to bring their own nets, or we could make some available at the senior center. And option 3 was having 2 dedicated pickleball courts and 3 tennis courts. And then the nets would be, all the equipment, the nets would be permanently installed in this option. So 80% of the respondents from the survey chose one of the options to go with pickleball. 121 of the 219 responses favored option C. So it's pretty favorably voted on, is to switch to adding dedicated pickleball to the area. And so what we'd ask from you is a resolution to put together bid documents for option C to move ahead and start planning for that next spring or summer. And we've given, I mean, this is our, I think, 3rd time coming to PAC, and we've alerted the survey takers that we'd be presenting here. We did not get any more feedback from the last 2, and we did receive 1 email in support of it. It was really helpful from a resident. They even sent along some pickleball nets and some equipment and made some suggestions for us to look into. So I thought that was really nice to hear back. So that's all I have right now. If you guys have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Great, thank you, Adam. Any questions for Adam or comments about the proposal? Pravina.
Yeah, thank you. One, congratulations on such a high respondents for a court. And I also too like this idea of having option C, allowing a community of pickleball players, which I know PAC has received a lot of pickleball champions emails. So I'm really glad to see that we're supporting this on the other side of town. My question is, I remember one of your presentations, you had brought this idea of using courts as art projects. Was there any consideration of maybe using a portion for one of those painted courts, or is that only for basketball?
So as of now, that's only for basketball. The way I can look into it further, but from my understanding is the line placement for tennis and pickleball is much more important to be able to see the contrasting line work. So I have not seen any murals placed on these courts, but it's definitely something I can look into.
Yeah, as somebody who plays a little bit of tennis and have a couple tennis players in my family, I think it would be fairly distracting to have paintings on the tennis courts. Even the extra lines for pickleball can cause problems.
And that's what we heard about with some of the comments that we received is some people were just against option B because of the the lines kind of being confusing, even with having different colors on there. It just seemed like that was kind of an issue.
Any other comments or questions? Julie, I know this is in your ward. Did you have any thoughts or anything that neighbors have shared with you?
I have not heard a single word, and these courts are used very heavily.
Mhm.
So, but I think more so, during this time. So I think people will adjust just fine. And we have a very, it's a very multi-generational neighborhood, and the park draws from well beyond the neighborhood. So I actually really like having a set, especially right next to the senior center, for when that hopefully reopens. I think that I think it's a smart place to put it, and we still will have 3 tennis courts, right? So no, I have and I will hear usually when I'm out walking my dog or something if there's a problem. So no problems.
Good to hear.
Thanks. For what it's worth, I was at I took a walk through Leslie Park a couple weeks ago, early in the morning, around 8:30 in the morning, and all of those pickleball courts were in use at 8:30 a.m. on a sunny day, mostly by seniors. So it is definitely something that is being utilized where it's available. I'm sorry, just looking for hands. Any other comments or questions, or is there a motion to approve the resolution, which would allow for us to proceed with option C?
I put a motion to approve.
Okay, motion by Pravina.
Second.
Second, sorry, who said that?
Lauren did.
Lauren, hi. Thanks, Lauren. Okay, so a motion to approve by Pravina and a second by Lauren. Any further discussion? All right, seeing none, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 All opposed? All right, resolution passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Adam, thanks for joining us. Item 8B is a resolution to recommend approval of a 3-year professional services agreement for engineering services for Parks and Recreation with Smith Group, Rowe Professional Services Company, and Stantec Consulting, Michigan. And Hillary
Paige,
with us.
Paige, could Adam stop sharing his screen?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Adam, actually, yeah, that would be helpful. Thanks, Ruth. And then Hillary, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, can everyone hear me? I'm using my new headset. Okay. Great. So these contracts follow our previous standing contract templates. So with each firm, so it's 3 separate agreements. They would be for a 3-year period and up to $150,000 per fiscal year. And so previously, the last 3 years, we did have Smith Group and Rowe under contract with us, and they've developed a really great working relationship. And then we're adding Stantec this year as an additional resource because of some of their engineering capabilities. And so the reason we have these standing contracts for as-needed services is that because of the quantity of projects that come up, the process of going through a request for proposals and selecting consultants individually for each project is just very labor and time intensive. So this allows us to pre-qualify firms and expedite project completion. So the selected firms still provide us with proposals with scopes of work and fees. So we do analyze those for individual projects and compare firms for each project that's selected. And then, so as far as part of this process, we did go through an RFP process. We received 11 proposals. We interviewed, I believe, 6 firms. And these were the firms that really stood out to us based on their qualifications and experience. So if anyone has any questions, happy to answer them.
Anne.
Have you worked with Stantec in the past?
We have, yep. We actually had them under contract, I believe it was 2 cycles ago. And then just based on our kind of project specific work coming up, we had tried Row for a little bit. This year we wanted to bring them in. So we're actually, previously we'd only had 2 engineering firms under contract. And so we're gonna move back to 3. Stantec just had some more kind of heavy engineering, structural, mechanical, that some of the other firms didn't have quite as strongly. So yeah, and we have a great relationship. We know one of the project managers. We've worked a lot with him previously.
Rachel.
I have a question for Paige.
Yeah.
Do I need to recuse myself from this vote? My dad works at Row. I don't receive anything from him financially anymore, but I just wanted to check.
I appreciate you asking that. I'm actually going to let Derek answer that question.
I mean, I don't
Be glad to. Yeah, no, if you don't, my understanding of it, if you don't stand to receive any direct financial benefit from the contract or have any direct financial windfall from it, then you don't need to recruit yourself. You're fine.
Okay, great. Thank you. Just wanted to check.
Thanks for asking. Yeah, glad you asked. Better safe than not. Yeah. Any other questions or comments? Yeah, Jeff.
Thanks. I guess this would apply to the next one too, so I'll ask for both of them. So this pre-qualification, and then there's a limit on the yearly contract fee, but is there any retainer or anything paid out, or it's just going through the motions so that they are available for us as needed? Like, we don't pay to retain them, do we?
We do not, no.
Okay.
It's only, we pay them for specific projects. And we do actually like formalize each specific project. So we have kind of the standing overall contract. And then for each project, we write up a work statement that kind of formalizes the scope and the fee. So we do keep track of that. But yeah, they're only paid for the work that's done. And if we, for some reason, didn't use a firm, they wouldn't get paid. But in the past, we haven't had that happen.
Okay. Yeah, the recusal thing's interesting because it's very odd with council. It's specific. Like, you're like, if there's some, like we had a water rate vote, and it's like, well, I don't want to give myself a water rate break or a hike or whatever. But it doesn't matter because everybody in the city's getting it. Even me. And so it has to be, like Derek said, it has to be exclusively beneficial to just you outside of the whole, which I thought was interesting when I first learned about that.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like, so sorry if we gave everybody a hike or whatever happened. But yeah, it's interesting. So thanks for asking though.
Any other comments or questions for Hillary, or is there a motion to approve? Ruth?
I was just going to move to approve.
Right. Okay. Motion to approve the resolution by Ruth.
I second it.
Second by Rachel. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? Okay, great.
Hey, Hillary, Chairperson Morrison. Hillary, while you're here, I know you sent out an email earlier. There was an announcement you potentially wanted to make, and I did not make it earlier. Do you mind sharing that right now, real quick?
Yes, yeah, happy to. I was just going to let everyone know that we are scheduling another Zoom public meeting for the Gallup vehicle bridge replacement project, and also looking at the Park Road and Trail. We'll be sending out information on social media, but I realized it's before the next PAC meeting. So as of right now, that's scheduled for November 12th, which is a Thursday in the evening. So you'll get more information, but just wanted to mention it.
Great.
Thanks. I know you sent that to Josh, and then I forgot to bring it up earlier, so I appreciate it.
No problem. Thanks for the reminder.
Mm-hmm.
Can I just ask a real quick question on that? Because, so if I just understood that right, so there's a public meeting just on that portion of the trail through Gallup?
Correct. Yeah. So, oh yeah, go ahead.
Or is it through Gallup? I'm sorry if I'm misremembering exactly where that part is. I'm just thinking back because there already was a big public meeting at Forsyth. We're kind of overall the whole concept, and the majority of the public comments were great idea, hurry up and do it. So is there like what are we accomplishing with this second public meeting?
Yeah, so I'm trying to remember the meeting at Forsyth. Was that the Barton Bandemere pedestrian tunnel meeting that you're thinking of?
I think it was. I think it was broader with regard to all of the open,
All of the border trail.
open
That
points in the border to border. Yeah.
that might have been something that the county parks does, because the Washtenaw County Parks and Rec Commission is actually one that does most of the border to border trail planning. This one we haven't actually had a public meeting on it yet. We sent out a survey earlier this summer to kind of get some initial public feedback. So this will actually be the first Zoom public meeting on it. And so it's talking about preliminary designs for replacing the wooden vehicle bridge. That's the one you pass over when you drive into the park. And then it'll be looking at the portion of Park Road and border to border trail that starts just south of that bridge and continues to the end of the road down by the Universal Access Playground. So it's just looking at that portion of the trail and road. And really the main impetus for this project was that the bridge needs to be replaced, but we wanted to look a little bit more broadly so that anything we do kind of planning around the bridge replacement would make sense when we replace the trail and road as well.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, item 8C is a resolution to recommend approval of 3-year professional services agreements for architectural services for Parks and Recreation with Mitchell and Moet Architects and Hubble, Roth, and Clark.
Yes, so this is very similar to the last one. So these are, again, 2 contracts, 3 years, up to $150,000 per fiscal year. For this RFP, we actually received 17 responses, which we were really surprised because I think it was over double what we received last time. I think it's just a reflection of the economy. So we went through all of them. We interviewed 4 firms, and these were the 2 that really stood out to us. Mitchell and Moet have been under standing contract with the Parks Department for a while. I don't know exactly how many cycles, but they have a really long standing history of working with us. They've really developed a great relationship from us. They're actually a great resource because they have lots of old drawings that maybe we don't even have in our files, but they have just so much knowledge about the park structures, park buildings, how the city works. We also appreciate that their offices are only a block away from City Hall, so in normal times it's very convenient to meet out on site or meet on a moment's notice. So Mitchell and Moet, we've been very happy with them. And then Hubble, Roth, and Clark, also known as HRC, they stood out to us. They have a lot of sustainability expertise. The firm is actually an engineering firm that has an architectural department. And so it's great because they have those consultants in-house as well for an architectural project. They could also have the site component and really be an integrated practice. They also have a long history of municipal work, and they have some really great new technology that can, they called it forensic architecture, but for older buildings where they can really determine whether there's a leak somewhere or if a component's failing. So we're really excited. This will be our first time for the Parks Department working with them, but they have a long history of working with our city engineering department and stormwater department. So yeah, looking forward to developing that relationship as well. So if anyone has any question about the 2 architecture contracts.
What kind of projects do you see in the near future that would involve an architect?
Yeah, so I'd say most of our work architecturally has been almost doing smaller permit drawings so that our park operations staff can do improvements. So in the past, we had them drop basically permit drawings so we can get building permits to do the work in-house. So in the past, they did permit drawings for the farmers market restroom that we'll hopefully be renovating this winter. Just some smaller changes in our existing buildings, converting closets to toilets, renovating to make ADA compliant entrances. So a lot of it tends to be smaller work, but then we do occasionally have larger projects. Mitchell and Moet worked on designing the renovation and an expansion of the Argo restroom that will be happening. That's the one we got the grant for and will be constructed next fall. In the past, we've had them work on things like the Bryant Community Center addition and expansion. I'm not sure about any specific projects that I have in mind, but possibly repairs or replacement to some picnic shelters. There's some of those that could use some work. And really a lot of our facilities are older, so we're hoping to do an ADA assessment over the next year. And so I could foresee a lot of smaller projects kind of making adjustments to bring any deficiencies up to standard.
Any other questions? Is there a motion?
Move to approve it.
Great. Okay. Motion by Stephen to approve the resolution. Is there a second? Seconded by Ann. Any further discussion? All in favor of the resolution, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right. Thank you. The resolution passes. And Hillary,
Thank you
for all of your information.
Thanks.
Great. Moving on to item 8D, a resolution regarding the Leslie Food Forest project. So we do not have a resolution in the packet. Nothing has been officially written yet, because this is an opportunity for us to have a discussion following up on our discussion at our September PAC meeting regarding the food forest. In the packet was questions that were submitted by PAC and answered by Scott Spooner, as well as Robin and Shunasi, the representatives from the food forest. So hopefully everyone had a chance to review all those questions and answers. And obviously a lot of emails have come in to us over the course of the last month regarding the food forest. So I'd like to, I see that we have Shunasi and Robin joining us. So thank you both for coming back today. And if there's anything that either of you want to say, I'll let you go ahead, and then I'd like to open it up for PAC members to have a discussion about this.
Thank you, Paige. I'd like to take just a second, first of all, to thank you guys for your consideration and even some of the feedback from last month. Planning for an exit strategy was really helpful. And I would like to take just a second to speak to and clarify the character of the coalition, because it feels important in terms of how we are being viewed, so that we can hopefully evaluate the merit of the project. You know, there is, we're hearing that it's seen that we never asked for permission, and that isn't our perspective. We didn't ask properly because we were uninformed about how to do that. And it feels like that's a big distinction on our part. That we were 3 weeks in when we found out that that was an error that we made. And I think city staff, you know, will vouch for the fact that in the 6 months since then, we have demonstrated a spirit of collaboration and cooperation and hard work, and that is the character of the coalition, which is a multiracial, intergenerational, really hardworking and dedicated group of people who have skills that lend themselves to this. So I think, you know, then it was our understanding that city staff was asked to put forward recommended resolutions. One would be to nix the project, one would be to support the project, and the other would be to give us a year to demonstrate merit and viability of the project. And if in fact that's true, and I'm understanding that correctly, we're hoping that that's what you'll do. So I think that's it for me.
Right. And you do understand that correctly. That's sort of right now are 3 options that are on the table.
Okay.
After we have this discussion.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. And Robin, did you want to add anything to that?
Yes, thank you, Paige, and thank you for Shunasi for what you shared. I just wanted to briefly, like Shunasi said, address this question around termination and exit strategy that was brought up in the last meeting and was recommended that we talk about in this meeting. That is something that was really useful feedback for us and that we've given a lot of thought to and put into our plan, and is informing how we're looking at the project at this point. And as you all know, our primary liaison in the city in this project has been Scott Spooner, in charge of maintenance, who's here with us right now. And so should we come to a point where we are needing to close down the project, whether that be, next year or in 10 years, as, community engagement wanes, should that happen, we would be communicating with Scott or, whoever is in charge of park maintenance about what the ideal version of that space would be like, so that maintenance would be able to take it over and be in charge of that space. And then we as the coalition would take on the responsibility of getting the area to that state, so that park maintenance would be able to seamlessly take over the maintenance of it in whatever state would be ideal for them, given the state of the project.
Yeah, and I think I'll just offer a reminder that it is a quite small space, so that is really within the range of possibility. At this point, it's 1/5 of 1 acre that we're proposing.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you both. So I'd like to open it up for Pac discussion. So feel free to share your thoughts on the project in general, any of the feedback that we've had over the last month. You're also welcome to ask questions of Shanasi and Robin while we have them with us, and of Scott as well, who's been, working on this. And then the goal of this discussion is to come out of this meeting with some sort of resolution so that the food forest has guidance on what their next steps are. Either way. Pravina, I saw your hand first.
Okay, thanks. I have a question for, I'm not sure who could answer this question, maybe somebody in this room. So when Robin mentioned coalition, is that similar to what we did with the skate park when that was put together and proposed, that there was an organization that was behind it? I just wanted to get some understanding. When we say coalition, is that an organization or is that still a community base? Because I know that we have the Growing Project, I think that's the name of it. And then I know we have the skate park as 2 organizations externally that work with the parks.
So I'm not familiar with the skate park, so maybe someone else will be able to speak to that, but I can speak to what our coalition is. It's made up of Ann Arbor residents who are both surrounding the park in Arrowwood, others around the park and across Ann Arbor, who are really excited about this project and wanting to make it go forward. And like Shanasi said, it's, multiracial, intergenerational, a broad range of skills. Some people who have a strong organic farming background or permaculture background, engineering background, and some people who are new to this and really excited to be gaining those skills. Yeah. And so it's a coalition of residents that came together around the possibility of this food forest. And so it's a pretty new group of people. We, Shanasi and I, are part of True Earth, which is a separate organization. And we have, hosted a page about it on our website and things like that, because we have those organizational tools already from being a more longstanding organization. But this coalition is a new group of residents who have come together around this particular project.
So there's no organization behind it. I guess that's when I say the word coalition,
yes,
you're saying it's a group of interested people versus an organization or a nonprofit or, okay.
Right.
Gotcha.
Exactly.
We have been reaching out to folks, businesses and folks for sponsorship, but we haven't really, that's just very new. So, and that's separate from a community. This is a community-based thing, if that answers your question. I hope it does.
And we've been using, I'm sorry. I was just going to follow up on that. We've been using some of the guidelines for the Sustaining Ann Arbor Together grant as a metric for the types of organizations. And one of those is sort of a neighborhood organization or coalition. And that's really what we're seeing ourselves as, is a neighborhood and citywide coalition of residents is how we've been operating.
I can
to clarify, the skate park is a 501c3 organization, Pravina.
Say that one more
Wait,
time.
What's a?
The skate park is the 501c3 is a group. Sorry, they are a 501c3. Scott, did you want to add something to that?
Nope, that's exactly what I was going to say. Also, I think Project Grow is the same.
And Project Grow is, yes, Project Grow is also a registered nonprofit. Rachel, did you have something to add?
Yes, I'm seeking some additional context around the water line. So I saw in the parks document, which was very helpful, so thank you to whoever put that together, the Q&A there that there was a breakdown of what the cost would be for adding a water line, but I don't quite understand, based on the proposal that the coalition put together, if that's something that they want or anticipate wanting, and if that's what they're alluding to when they talk about applying for a community grant.
Thank you for this question. It's not what we're alluding to, and at this point, that is not at all part of our plan. Our primary plan for water on site is rainwater catchment off of the building that will be on site, because it's a way that we can both meet most of our water needs on site as well as demonstrating a sustainability principle. We have met with Project Grow since our last meeting just to learn more about their model. And one of the things we learned is that they use a detachable water meter in the sites where they're getting water from a private source. And that's something where if we needed supplemental water from Arrowwood or any other nearby area, we would be able to use that water meter just for the water we were using. Like if we're having a drought and it's really dry and sunny, and we just need to supplement that water from the rainwater catchment, we could use that as a stopgap measure. But no, we're not looking at adding a water line right now at all.
So then am I correct in assuming that that was provided just in anticipation, that if you guys said that there was no water?
I believe that was a question from a PAC member that they specifically wanted to know what the cost would be, and that's why it was provided. We didn't decide to provide that information.
Or ask that question.
Yeah.
That's correct. It was a question. I'm not sure who asked it, but it was a question submitted to staff.
Okay, thanks. I just wanted to get my head on straight around that issue.
Yes, thank you.
Anne.
Then as a follow-up, how would you be funding the construction of the building and the rainwater catchment system?
So at this point, the budget that is before us, what we were told would be a good idea, and we're hoping to do is to apply for one of the Sustaining Ann Arbor Together grants. And I'm not 100% sure I have this accurate, but I think that money was allotted for this year. The steps that we would take in the autumn are pretty much free. So we would still go ahead. That grant application is basically written on our part, but we had to wait for approval before we could submit it. And so we would go ahead and still submit that. And Dr. Stoltz and the folks at the Sustainability Department gave us every impression that we are really in good running for one of those grants. If for some reason we didn't get awarded a grant, we would do a GoFundMe or some sort of public, fundraising project to cover the expenses. And we're also just working very hard to keep the expenses low. So.
Ruth.
So I guess I have a question and a comment. Are we just doing questions now or also comments?
Feel free to.
Okay.
Go.
So if as I understood it, like reading through what Scott or Parks prepared, if you had done this in a different order, then I think the question would have been, is this the best spot? So, and I kind of feel like Parks needs to, or PAC needs to come at that with sort of both questions. One question is like, do we want to support this? The other question is, if we want to support this or something very similar to this, is evaluating this site. And so this is really maybe less a question for Robin and Shanasi and more for Scott and Parks. Like, how would you go about evaluating this location or other locations as a spot in terms of, like we've done for other things like the skate park or dog parks or so that's sort of the question. And then the comment, I guess, is that I guess I'm not completely comfortable with the idea of this going forward without a connection to a more established nonprofit. And so maybe that's a comment, but it's also a question to Shunasi and Robin in terms of like, you've talked to Project Grow, and that may or may not be like a good match. It could be that there is a community organization like, I don't know, CAN or something that would be a better match in terms of the goals, but in terms of how have you explored working with more established nonprofits, and how does the group feel about that more generally?
So I'm going to make my best effort at answering your question, and thanks for bringing it forward. Part of what we think the merit of the project is that it is a community or a resident-based coalition. And we feel that it's important as the city is centering sustainability goals, and we are facing the multiple crises that are unfolding: ecological, environmental, economic, etc., that people from the community with sound skills and in an organized fashion come forward and collaborate on caring for the parks and advancing the sustainability goals. And in terms of an organization, we are serving, Robin and I, as liaisons, and the function within this group of community members of community organizing and ecological design. And I have decades of experience there, and Robin is about 15 years in. So it's not, I don't know if we're giving the impression that it's an ad hoc group of people who don't have relevant skills or a sound skill base and necessary skills to this project, because that's not the case. And I mean, I think we would be open to further collaboration. And so far, what we have been learning is that even had we had an idea of how we were supposed to ask better at the beginning of this, no one has really known where to send us. Like, we would have been punted back and forth a few places, because it is sort of, no pun intended, a groundbreaking initiative. It sounds stupid, I didn't mean it, but
I think the question wasn't about your ability from knowledge, but I think the nonprofit question was from maybe a liability, or having it attached to an organization that's insured, or anything that happens from long term. So I think that's one of some of the concerns, not myself, and obviously other people may have. So it's not about your ability; it's more thinking from can the city be affiliated? How would they be affiliated with this organization, rather than just a group of people? So just wanted to
Right.
clarify.
Yeah, that is where I'm coming from. God forbid you should all get sick at the same time. But I feel like for parks, there needs to be some kind of connection to an organizational entity.
Jeff, I see your hand, but I want to give Scott a chance to respond to all this from a staff perspective.
Yeah, I think Ruth asked a little bit about situated in the park where this is located. From a staff standpoint, it is a small area, and the slope of the land and other things. If I were to choose a spot to have a small project like this, that would be one of the spots I would have probably looked at. So within the park, I think it's a pretty good spot. It doesn't encroach into a designated playing field. It's a little bit away from all of the other things, but it's still along the path. It's accessible. I think within the park, I think it's in a good location.
Great. Jeff, did you have a comment?
Well, it's just sort of a follow-up on the two previous questions, which I think are decent questions. That if there was a memorandum of understanding to be drawn up, which was one of the first things that came out when we had that on-site meeting, and is that why we're looking for the consideration that there might be a named entity instead of a group of folks, or that was somehow registered with the county or something? I mean, could a DBA take care of it? Or I know Derek might have the answer to this, and is that traditionally the or would that be the best method for us so that there is some memorandum of understanding for use, or is there an insurance requirement? You know, I guess I understand why there would want to be a named entity that had some kind of filed, you know, I don't know. So, you know, it's like, it's put in a book somewhere that this is a group, you know, whether it's a 501c3 or, you know, even, I mean, even like you know, like I've done, you know, a DBA or an LLC or anything, right? Is that necessary and appropriate, do you think, Derek?
Yeah, let me tread carefully because I'm not an attorney, but yeah, certainly traditionally for us to do business and to have some kind of memorandum of understanding, that it has to be with an individual or an entity that's able to take responsibility for that end of the agreement. Traditionally, it would be an LLC, or more traditionally, in an instance like this, it would be a 501c3. Or some similar, that's, you know, common terminology for a nonprofit, but some type of registered nonprofit that was both able. And I think if you're going to look to apply for a sustainability grant, this is something you're going to have to put together anyways, because you're going to need it to accept the funding from the city. Someone has to accept the grant money from the city, and I don't think that money can be accepted by an individual resident. It has to be accepted by a nonprofit. I forget specifically what those entities are, but there's a specific list of entities.
It's not,
so,
right?
Excuse me?
We just were looking at that, and I'm 90% certain that you are sanctioned to apply for the grant, which means receive the grant on different categories, and nonprofit was not the only category.
Well, it's not the only one, but it has to be some kind of legal entity to accept the grant. Yeah, I was in part of the group that wrote the requirements. But it's rarely do we do an individual, some kind of arrangement or understanding with an individual, unless it's a license agreement with an individual property owner to use the property. In this instance, is it technically possible that one individual could enter into that license agreement with the city to be responsible for the project? I assume it's technically possible, but it would be highly unusual. I think that's a very long way of saying that, yes, the standard operating procedure would be for some type of entity to be established that the city would enter into this partnership for, not only for the operations and the maintenance aspect of it, but I've heard a lot of discussion about what happens 3, 4, 5, 10 years from now. We all have to be cognizant of that. None of us might be sitting at this table 10 years from now, but that entity would be the ones that would still be responsible for whatever operational or change agreement was put in place for that period of time.
I'd also like to say, Derek, too, that I think we'd also have to figure, you know, whatever we decide will be then something that we'd have to comply with for other organizations or groups that would want to come forward, right? If we accept it this way and another group does it somewhere else in the city, it changes the standard. That's just something that we have to be aware of.
Yeah, I mean, we would certainly, if the PAC and the city decides to move forward with it, which I don't think, if staff didn't think there was merit to this request, we wouldn't be, you know, sitting here having this conversation at this point. And I think it's fair to say when the idea of it, nobody's questioning the idea or the merits of the idea, the location, all of those things. I think the intent here is to find a way to make this work. And that's why we're all here. And I think the idea is to allow some kind of agreement to be put in place that allows that instrument to be established, whatever it is. And then as long as that entity is established or that instrument is established, it will be one, I would assume, that is already currently acceptable to the city and that we've done partnerships with in the past. I mean, a 501c3 seems like the natural one for me and the one we do business with the most in these circumstances, but I would leave that up to the coalition to decide what is their best direction. We would be glad to help. You know, if there's anything we can do to point them in that direction, obviously they'll need their own advice to do it. But if there's anything we can do or point them in the right direction, I think we would be glad to do that.
Is there an insurance requirement?
Traditionally, yes, but we have council member, I'm sure you're aware, we have lots of different arrangements with lots of different structures depending on what those are. I don't know if that's been discussed in this one specifically to date, but it would be something that may be, if this does move forward, something that should be considered as maybe a condition or a consideration of any resolution that goes forward. I would look to the attorney's office to establish whether that is. Scott, I don't know if that discussion has taken place to date as to whether an insurance policy is required or not.
I mean, is Project Grow carry insurance? I assume.
I don't believe so, council member, but I would want to double check. I would see an arrangement that is very similar either to Project Go or depending on the scale of it, somewhere between Project Grow and the skate park and how those arrangements work. Project Grow is very small in scale. When you start talking about structures and other things, that piques my consideration as far as insurance goes when there's structures like that. Or it may be just something that's very simply covered by the city's blanket policy. I would look for the attorneys to weigh in on that if this goes forward.
Yeah,
it's not something that if it's necessary, it's not something that we can arrange and don't arrange on a regular basis. I don't see it being an impediment.
No, I appreciate that because I know, like, I mean, I have to carry insurance to operate on a city sidewalk in a city right of way. I do graffiti removal, and so if I block off that, that's $1 million liability policy that floats with my LLC, you know.
Yeah.
And so that's to operate in a city right of way, and this is somewhat, you might consider could be considered a city right of way, right? So I guess maybe that can type something up for our attorneys, just ask what their opinion is on that. So
yeah, we will.
Thanks.
Yep.
Steve, I've seen your hand a couple times, so I want to give you a chance.
So thanks, Paige. So I do appreciate all the additional information about the Food Forest project. And I wanted to confirm, I did head out and visit the site. It's really cool. I think it's a cool location. I think it uses a lot of what's already there. And so I kind of appreciate what you had already explained to the group before, Shunasi and Robin, about sort of the energy that came behind. And so, yeah, I mean, I guess the process could have been different at the beginning, but I'm not worried about that. Let's just assume that the group came to us today and said, hey, we got this cool idea. You know, how can we facilitate this? What would this commission be doing? Like, how would we try to facilitate that? So I think I want to sort of step through this and try to think longitudinally, how does this look, now? How's it going to look in the future? And how can we sort of facilitate those steps? Because I don't think we need to solve this all at once. I don't think we need to say yes or no based upon whether or not there's a 501c3 that's already been formed or something. Because what I'm seeing here is what's already on the ground, what you and the neighbors have already created. It's already something there, right? There's already some piece of this that will grow and come back in the spring, right? What you see on the paper is even more ambitious, right? There's a building, maybe there'll be a water line, maybe not, I don't know. There's also trees that are envisioned that will be part of the plantings and whatever. All those things, all those bigger picture items cost money, right? And would have to have some sort of, and I don't think the Parks Department is putting the money up. It's going to be more of is this community department, is this community engagement going to sort of find the money? Mm-hmm. That's when we start to talk about what an organization would look like, because I think if you want the grants, or if you want, the sort of entity to entity relationship with the city parks, the community sort of group is going to need to morph into a formal organization. Mm-hmm. I think, if I'm not mistaken, this is kind of what happened with the skate park. I think in day one, when the idea came to life, there wasn't a 501c3 skate park having board meetings and raising funds, but there was a group of interested people that wanted to make this idea come to life. So it would seem to me that there's something we can do here within parks to sort of accommodate this, or sort of see, is this something that can continue to blossom in this space, right? And maybe it doesn't need to be more complicated than almost like an adopt-a-park arrangement, right? At a minimum, the people that are there doing the work have signed the form, signed the waiver form or whatever. They're volunteering their time to do this in the park. The Parks Commission has expressed support that this space should be used in this way. And maybe that's all we need to do in the moment, right? And then maybe next year, as the process evolves and as the site evolves and as the group evolves, you start to think, well, maybe what we thought we needed yesterday in terms of what these drawings look like isn't what we really need. Maybe we need a bigger space. Maybe we need more programming for the kids. Maybe we need, and so I don't think we want to sort of prevent ourselves from any of those possibilities, but I also don't think we want to tie ourselves down with all of the possible complications that will come in the future. So I'm encouraged by this. I want to find a way to sort of do something to facilitate it. And maybe just sort of using the space and maybe an adopt a parks kind of way gets us in that direction.
So to build off of what Steve has said, and I also went and walked the site recently just to get a feel for it. And I agree with what Steve said and what Scott said. It's in, I think, a good location. It's not in the way. It's easily accessible. So I'd like to share a proposed resolution that points to staff's recommendation to possibly do a pilot year. And during that year, work with the Food Coalition on the site, on the public process, work on some sort of agreement that we could use moving forward that would be similar to what we have with Project Grow with the skate park. It does acknowledge the fact that the process was not the way it usually works. But as Derek pointed out, we are all here having this discussion for a second meeting because we are all interested in seeing this work in some capacity. And it remains to be seen what exactly that looks like. And I think we need some time to figure out exactly how this is going to move forward as a site and how it's going to move forward between the Food Forest Coalition and the city. So I'm going to try and share my screen. Oh, I guess, Kristen, I'm not able to share my screen. Is that something I can do, or should I just send you a document to share?
She just made you the co-host. Now you should be able to share.
Thank you. Okay. Thanks. Okay, so I want to give everyone a moment to just read through this, and then PAC members and council members as well. If you have comments or edits or want to propose something else as well. Councilmember Hayner, you raise your hand.
I mean, if it doesn't disturb people to start commenting while you're reading.
Yeah, go ahead. Go right ahead.
Okay. I guess I just a couple remarks. I don't know where to start. I guess a couple things. So I too have been up there a couple times. I did a little volunteer mowing and in among it, so that it was easily accessed for folks who were working on it. And even when I was up there, a lot of people were coming by. It was very interesting. I think it is an interesting location, and it's right in between these two trails that get a lot of traffic, and it's really a good location for this kind of thing. And we had some stuff last night at our council meeting about Viridian, which is a really great project that's happening on the south side. And a couple things leapt out at me of that some of the benefits of that are that this community farming is integral to that project over there at Viridian, and more so it's considered beneficial because it's adjacent to this mixed income social housing they have going, which is very similar to this. And so there was just a bunch of things that came out from the Viridian one that made me think, yeah, this is kind of like it had a lot of similarities. And so I think there are many merits to this project. I also know that it was my understanding that one of the reasons that this kind of got started up is because of the agricultural practices that surround this, where there's there's things you do in the spring and the summer and the fall and the winter and so on. And so I guess what made me want to speak was the concerns about number 2, resolution item 2, that maybe there's no further work and we got to define what might be necessary to keep this alive in good condition, because I think that there was a fall planting and some other things maybe were mentioned at one of the previous meetings. And so I guess my question would be for the folks here from NFF, is there work that can we find out what that bit of work needs to be done yet?
Yeah, thank you, Jeff, for bringing this up. So we've already been in extensive communication with Scott about this too. And there is, we wouldn't want to do any more plantings until spring, but in order to be ready for plantings in spring, and we would agree to the things that are laid out here of working with the city between now and April 1st to clarify things. There is a soil amendment that would need to happen in at least just part of the area so that that part could be planted in the spring. That's the way that we would actually be able to do these educational events that would happen there. And we were hoping that if we did receive approval for the year pilot, we would do that soon before snowfall and just do that soil amendment in the area, which I think also gives everybody in the community who lives here and who is walking past there. We wanted to do that and put up signage so that people have a sense of what's happening and it doesn't just look abandoned, because we don't want it to just look abandoned. So if that one exception could be made, it would go a long way toward maintaining the vitality and good condition portion of the program that you're laying out here.
So that would be a couple work days, that kind of thing?
Yes.
I think that, so in the final resolved clause, item 2 does say what is beyond what is necessary to keeping the existing NFF alive in a good condition. So I welcome other comments, but to me, what you just described would be something, would be keeping it alive and in its current condition.
Okay.
So I think we don't want to see anything that's going to expand the scope of what's there now until an agreement is put in place with the city. But if you're doing sort of maintenance work to maintain the existing condition, that's provided for. Anne, I see your hand.
What would be the goal of the pilot program? How would we measure at the end of the 1 year the success or failure of it?
A great question. A part of the goal is just to give us time to put in place an agreement with NFF. And Derek, go ahead and chime in.
Well, I think you were going right down the same road I was going to go down. I think it's to give it a year to breathe. It's to work out the agreement and any of the technical issues. It's to make sure that anything that is necessary for the longer term arrangements can be put in place, and also to allow the additional public outreach to be done by the NFF, which I understand they've done a considerable amount of already and would seem reasonable between that period, and to get that feedback. So I think outside of those, I don't think there's any more lofty expectations of it, but it's allowed that space to take place, allow the work that's been done to stay in good condition and continue to be tended, and to give the opportunity for the appropriate agreements to be put in place and to evaluate whether this is a positive for the community going forward. So I think that's the intent of the pilot in whole, if I understand it correctly.
Yeah, it also allows us time to do things like speak with the attorneys about insurance policy, structure,
All of those things. Yep, for sure.
all those things. It allowing for grant applications, things like that. Steve, I see your hand, but I think I saw Rachel first. So Rachel, why don't you go ahead and then Steve.
I'd like to suggest an edit,
okay.
If it's appropriate. For resolved number 5, I feel strongly that the NFF should have written in there that they have access to city support on how to conduct those classes, just so that there's someone in the city that they can bounce ideas off of and make sure that the outreach methodology that they're using matches what the city expectations are. Otherwise, I think you might have difficulties analyzing the results if you just leave people to willy-nilly do it however they please. Then I think that leaves them open to being like, well, you didn't do it the way we wanted. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah.
I also think that that might have the benefit of, perhaps maybe the city notification tools could be used to say, hey,
yeah, I'm hoping
come
that
to this event,
yeah, I'm hoping that this gives NFF the best set of resources possible to have successful outreach and educational classes so that they can lean on the city for support. So thank you for that edit.
Yeah, I
Yeah, we can commit to that. We'd be glad to provide any assistance.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think NFF is the perfect group to be out there in the front of the actual education sessions. It's a neighborhood and community-driven project, which is perfect. And our role playing it, providing any backup and any assistance, we'd be glad to do so.
Great, thanks, Derek. Steve, do you want to go ahead? And then Ruth, you're next.
I had a couple of proposed edits, I guess. I'd like to buy a vowel. Looking at resolve paragraph 1, and maybe this is a question too. I'm just wondering, the reference to the Project Grow, is that really the model? I mean, my suggestion would be just to delete that part between the commas in number 1, just so it says the city and NFF develop a formal agreement that outlines the goals and purpose of the NFF, blah, 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 all the rest of that. But just delete the part that says similar in scope to the existing agreement between the city and Project Grow. And or if that's good, I would need to see that. I don't know if I've seen the Project Grow agreement. Is that the right model that we want to look at?
It was included in the packet as part of the Q&A response, but I'm fine with deleting that part. Derek, is that all right with you?
Yeah, that's fine with us. It's referenced in the whereas clauses as well. So I think the edit is actually, it's not a bad idea. In case we come up with a different model, it's not in conflict with the resolution. It very likely will be, I'm guessing, based on some of the legwork that's gone into it. But if for some reason that changes, there's no expectation that it looks similar as part of the result. So I'm comfortable with that.
My other suggestion would be with number 5. I'm wondering, do we even need that, right? I mean, because in number 1, we're talking about, we'll get to an agreement that talks about community outreach and so forth. Then number 5, we pin it down as to exactly what we mean. And then now we're saying, okay, cool, the city's going to support that. All of that is great. I want that to be the outcome. I just don't know that I want to pin us down to this number 3 and this kind of in this particular document. And instead, leave it open is an option. Leave it open. Just in number 1, the formal agreement will have to cover that topic anyway. So it's just a thought. I mean, I don't know if we need to be specific. I'm okay with it in there, but I'm just wondering, what if at the end of the meeting, NFF says, great, we want to do 5 outreach classes or whatever, and now we got to figure out whether that's too much given the terms of this.
I'm okay to take it out or leave it. Are there?
I really liked it.
Okay.
I guess some of it depends on NFF. I just like the idea of saying like, okay, so you wanna, I'm trying to put myself in your shoes. I don't mean to speak for you, but I'm thinking, okay, so you want us to do more community outreach. I would want to know, like, what are the goals? What do you want me to hit? And what definition is there around those goals? Otherwise, the way that I visualize outreach may not be what you were expecting all along. So we might as well spell out our expectations and be on the same page. That's how I approach it.
I think it's fine. It's easy for us. There actually have already been 3 free educational things happening there. We also, participated in the outreach thing by adding to the signage out there and putting a QR code so that people could just click on it and do a public survey. And we had a really good response to that, including from many people we never knew before that. So we're happy to collaborate with the city in the outreach part to benefit from what you bring and also bring what our experience. And I think it doesn't feel cumbersome at all to say that at the least we would easily do 3 free outreach and educational events at the site.
Yeah, I
Okay.
also feel
I'm a
great about
convert.
number 5 as it is.
I withdraw the suggestion.
Appreciate the thoughts around it.
That's the first time we've gone head to head, Steve.
And if I could chime in on that too, I think there's a little bit of a timing issue, right? Because number 5 really just deals with 2021 season, whereas of course we'll want whatever the formal agreement is to go further out into the future and cover, so those things, the requirements may change. I think maybe it's more helpful to spell things out during this trial period, during this first year. And Steve, you totally stole my other comment. I completely agree with you about number 1, as to not draw any particular parallel with another agreement that may be in existence. And this is coming to fruition as a separate project, and I don't know if we need the language specifically comparing this agreement to another one. So
I thought you were going to say you wanted to buy a vowel.
Right. Me too. Yes, I also want that. Yes.
Ruth, how about you? Did you have a comment or want to buy a vowel?
Yeah, I do. I'd like to buy 2 vowels actually. So just a couple. Overall, I think this is pretty good in sort of grabbing the sense of the group. I think in number 1 that you're talking about a formal agreement for 2021 and not beyond that in this first one. And because we're coming back in the fall of 2021 and evaluating for the next year. So I think it should say something, I don't know the exact words, but that this is like for the 2021 season. Maybe right after a formal agreement, right where your cursor is.
Where my cursor is, yeah.
Yeah, for the 2021 season, which is what you refer to. And then on...
well, sorry, pause there for just one before your next.
Okay.
Let's resolve this first, if you don't mind.
Not at all.
I
would suggest for the 2021 growing season.
I think and Derek, please chime in. I think though we're hoping to have an agreement that would go forward, assuming that we approve this in October of 2021.
Yeah, I would suggest not making this that specific. My intent, and I think Colin's intent, would become to come back with an agreement that spans a longer period of time, maybe with checkpoints within that agreement where either party could leave the agreement under certain criteria. It may be that come April 1st, that agreement, we're only able to be successful enough to have it be for the 21 season. And that might be the recommendation, that it be a year agreement, maybe with the need to come back. But I would ask that specific the language not being the resolve clause, because then we're limited to that without a new resolution. So it could be either. Our intent is, I believe, in talking with Colin, our intent is to come back with an agreement that would span a longer time frame.
That was my understanding, is that the agreement would be put in place by April 1st and would encompass a longer time period.
So I guess then, I mean, because the way that I read this, when we get to number 6 and number 7, it's like with number 7, we're deciding whether this goes on beyond the year.
Yeah, which
So,
is why would we do that if on April 1st we develop?
right, exactly. And I think the other piece of that, and so this was my other comment, relates to number 6, which is like, in a long-term way, I wouldn't support this unless I had a really good sense of the organizational structure that the NFF group is going to use. And so what I was going to propose, and maybe it doesn't make sense there, is that number 6 say that the NFF report back to PAC on how the 2021 season went and their proposed organizational model going forward.
Wouldn't that be contained? I'm sorry to interrupt, but wouldn't that be contained in the, I mean, I assume that organizational model will be part of that formal agreement.
Right, I think that's
So that is, Jeff, that's exactly my point, is that when I look at number 1, I see it, if I see it as like, this is what we're doing for the first year, then that's, but Derek, I see you have your hand raised, so hopefully you can give us some good advice.
Well, I'm going to hope to, because I wasn't involved in the drafting of the actual resolution. But number 1 doesn't, if I'm reading it correctly, it doesn't say that it'll be entered into by April 1st, only that it'll be developed. I would assume that it wouldn't be entered into. Now, maybe it would, and make allowances for 6 and 7 to take place, and what happens if it does or does not, if it's not determined successful at this point. Or that agreement could be entered into at the same time at those, after that first year evaluation is done. But I think the intent of number 1, and Paige, correct me if I'm wrong, is to have it developed so it can begin the review process through PAC and be considered for entering into. Not that it would be entered into specifically by April 1st.
That's my understanding as well, is that this formal agreement would be written by April.
Yeah.
But it would not be approved for whatever the time period winds up being, 5 years, 10 years, 100 years, until next fall.
Well, then why would you develop it by April? I mean, if it's a formal agreement, why would you develop by April if you weren't gonna move forward till the fall?
I would suggest that sometimes the agreements themselves require a certain level of scrutiny by the public, and more than one meeting for consideration. The development of them by April allows for review by both staff, the attorney's office, potentially set meetings with PAC for consideration and alteration prior to that November deadline. Now, again, I didn't draft the resolution, but that wouldn't be uncommon for us to be reviewing the agreement prior to a final determination being made, because sometimes those take several reviews internally before their adoption and signing at the city.
Yeah, if I'm thinking back to the skate park several years ago, we were reviewing agreements and discussing them at PAC well before final approval for the skate park.
Correct.
There is a certain amount, there's an amount of time needed for the process.
And I would imagine that if we were to be allowed to plant and do educational activities there in the spring and the summer, that if the agreement was in place, you would have something to be measuring our performance and cooperation against come November, right?
That's exactly right. That's part of the goal, is that, if the agreement is in place, it's allowing you to work through the steps of continuing to plant with permission and doing these educational classes and the outreach and everything, so that when we talk in October of next year, we have something to measure.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense to me.
Could just making that a working agreement as opposed to a formal agreement simplify this somehow?
I like it.
I'm not a lawyer.
None of us are thinking.
Derek, is working agreement okay instead of formal agreement?
Yeah, both are fine for us. I think the point of that, number one, if I understand it correctly, is to make sure that the template is in place in April and that we're not waiting till the last minute for that agreement to be drafted and those structures to be developed.
I like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
To develop a working agreement that outlines.
Yeah, I think I feel more comfortable with that. Thanks, Mike.
Mike, thanks for that. Mike, did you have anything else? I saw your hand earlier. Is there anything else you wanted to?
The only other comment, and it was really for Derek and for staff, is, we do have this other food forest down in Burr Park that the Children's Wet Meadow started, and it may be a good thing to take a look at just to try to get an idea of a model that worked someplace else and that was acceptable to the city to be able to go ahead with.
In terms of the physical structure, are you meaning the administrative process or the physical example of the food forest, just out of curiosity?
I was thinking more administrative.
Okay.
It's a different site. It's a different place.
Mhm.
But, there are fruits to pick there now, because it was in there 6 years ago or 8 years ago.
Yeah.
And I'm not quite sure of the process that allowed that to go in. So it could be a good way to be able to look at some sort of a model that keeps you moving forward here.
Yep, understood. Thank you.
Sure.
Steve.
One, I guess, final suggestion for number 7 here would be to say the Park Advisory Commission will decide the future of the NFF project at Leslie Park following this pilot process or something like that. Just so it's, I don't think we need to tether it to November 21 meeting, but just let the pilot process run out and then we'll decide the future. So it would just be to delete at their November 2021 meeting. And then add, following this pilot process.
At the conclusion of the pilot process?
I mean, when you make your report in number 6 there, I mean, it could, the assumption would be that, I mean, the hope is that it would be a satisfactory report and PAC would say, hey, awesome, see you next year or whatever. And instead just say, I'd rather just see it say, instead of deciding the future, say, we want you to report back every year or whatever.
I think that's something that would be, and again, Derek, please correct me if I'm wrong, something that would be in the agreement that the city comes up with NFF, similar to how PAC has reports every year from lots of different organizations, from the skate park, from even the farmer's market, from Cobblestone Farm. We get yearly reports.
So that just becomes, when someone has that association, that just becomes a sort of a standard process.
So this will become one of the reports that we get on a yearly basis at PAC. Just like all those, we get reports from the Livery, from the pools. Leslie Science and Nature Center reports once a year to us. So I think it would become that.
I'm tempted to move for approval of this thing. I don't know how much more discussion.
I was just going to ask if there was a motion for approval.
Ann's got something. Sorry.
I just wanted to make sure that I understand the gist of the language here. Is that just to summarize, sort of, that the idea is that NFF is going to work on an agreement, and a working agreement over the winter. Then during the spring, summer, early fall, September, they will be working the site with city approval, city input, parks input. At the same time, PAC and the city and the public is evaluating that agreement that was developed, right?
Yep.
And then at the conclusion in October, November of next year, PAC comes back together and decides yes or no on that agreement.
Yes, yes. And the only
Did I
thing
get that right?
is that also during that time frame, there's public outreach and education happening as well.
All right, thanks.
So there is a motion to approve this resolution by Steve. Is there a second or any other comments? A second by Rachel?
Yes, please.
Wonderful. Okay. So a motion to approve by Stephen, a second by Rachel. Is there any further discussion?
I do have one other comment about number 1. And do we want to also include organizational structure in there in terms of maintenance responsibility, community outreach, and signage, just to make very clear that right now we're not quite sure who we are working with.
Good catch.
And just to be able to make sure, you know, we know who we've got a board at the skate park. We've got a board at Leslie Science and Nature Center. Just to help make that clear.
I'd take that on as a friendly amendment. So it'd be like the goals, purpose, and organizational structure of the NFF.
Does that look good?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so if they decide to join with a nonprofit, does that keep them stuck to that requirement?
I think that is one of the potential organizational structures. Right. This leaves it open for a myriad of different organizational structures to be decided.
Yeah, they could show up as the food forest committee from some existing nonprofit or something. And say, all right, we're just implementing that. No, I like that, Mike. That's a good adjustment.
Okay. Any other discussion or edits to this? All right, all in favor of the resolution, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, the resolution passes. So thank you all so much for working through this live. I really appreciate it. And thank you, Shunasi and Robin, for joining us today and answering all of our questions and hearing all of our comments. So we really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you all so much. We really appreciate your time and support and look forward to going forward.
Yeah, thank you also for just the endless hard work that you obviously do on our behalf, because it's pretty mind-boggling.
Yes.
We're just one item on the agenda. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you both. And from staff, I know this is going to be an evolving project as you guys go forward. I mean, the best thing I can suggest is stay in close contact with Scott about any changes or thoughts. I think we all know he's excellent to work with, and we want to see you be successful as this goes forward. So the best thing to do is keep him in the loop, even on the smallest thing. And we're looking forward to it. So congratulations.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
I'm looking forward to working with you.
Yay.
Yes, same
Thank
here.
you.
Thank you.
Take care.
All right, great.
Thanks to everybody for helping hash that out. I know this was a strange situation here, and staff has been really super helpful, and I really appreciate it. It's been a great thing up there, and I like I said, I can't tell you, a couple times I've been up there kind of working on a little bit, trying to help out, and people are just, what's going on, they're interested, you know, and so I think it's going to be good.
Good.
Well, thank you, Paige, for coming to the table today with that resolution prepared. It made things so much easier. I've been trying to think how to get my mind organized around this, and I didn't quite have it. So it was so helpful that you did.
But I'm glad that we could work through it all together in an efficient manner.
A quick question about was it Mike who brought up the other food forest that we have in our community? I wasn't aware of that. And how is that organization affiliated with PAC? Does anybody know?
I believe that started as a sort of side project of the Burr Park Children's Wet Meadow, which was a youth-driven project supported by a woman named Janine Palms, who, if you haven't met her, she's a real powerhouse in community organizing. There was a spot in Burr Park that constantly puddled and was mown year after year after year. And the kids all got together and did a little action research project and say, well, why don't we restore that area to native plants and turn it into a wet meadow? Well, that resulted in, I don't know, maybe up to 3 or 4 acres of Burr Park coming out of mowing and getting converted into native plants. And then what grew out of that was, hey, let's do something for people here too. And they began to use part of the park area where there were native plants for food production, apples, pears, peaches, pawpaws. And yeah, I guess it's quite beloved by folks that are in the Burr Park neighborhood, and it still goes on to this day.
And it wasn't just, you know, like Janine had some like random kid. She ran a school. Like my understanding is a preschool. So there was an organization connected to it. And she's also connected to connected to some of the folks that brought forward the market at Cobblestone as well. So there's a really rich history of neighborhood activity over there. So I don't know actually the real origin of what the agreement was like, but it's definitely been continuing for some time.
But I think that's to the point of there are some different models. If you want to read about the wet meadow, you can go to wetmeadow.org.
You'll meet all sorts of young adults now who are part of that in the community. Yeah.
The agricultural aspect of that is that, you know, it takes 5 or 6 years to get the fruit coming out there, you know, and so I sensed the urgency of their desire was displayed when they started without telling anybody. But you know, they have that sense that it's going to be this first year, the second year, you know, it's going to be a minute before people are plucking anything but the annuals that are planted there. And I've encouraged them to expand that portion of it as part of their teaching, because it's something that you can see a result in a season, and you know, then people are coming by and picking a tomato or whatever, and they really feel like it has value to the community. So I think it's an unusual thing here, these permaforests, but I think it's a great idea. And if it only takes 5 or 6 years to get going, and great.
Great. Well, thank you everyone again for that robust discussion about the food forest. Moving on to item 9 on our agenda, commission proposed business. We don't have any today. Item 10, land acquisition matters. Just a reminder that we're not having LAC as part of our meeting today. We'll be meeting via Zoom on November 9th, which is a Monday at 4 p.m. to discuss LAC. Item 11, second public comment period. Kristen, do we have any members of the public who would like to speak?
There is a caller. They have not. Oh, they have.
Hold on just a minute.
Caller ending in 341. You have 3 minutes to speak.
Hi, this is Stephanie Hamilton. I gave a comment at the beginning of this meeting, and I just want to say thank you all very, very much for finding a way forward for the food forest. I know it's taken a lot of people over a long time, and the system's not quite set up for something this organic in the community. And I just really, really appreciate you all finding a way that we can move forward. And so I'm really excited to turn, like old cardboard boxes in my basement into soil, into food for other people to eat, and do it together in a place where, everybody can come in and out. And so I'm just really excited and really grateful to you all for finding a way forward. So thank you.
Thank you for commenting. Kristen, do we have anyone else? No. Okay. Item 12, communications. They are included in your packet. Item 13, we have no closed session today, so we stand adjourned. Thanks everyone for joining today. We'll see you on November 9th for LAC.
Thank you. Oh, hey Paige, can you stay on for one? Beck, I just had a question for you.
Yeah, of course.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
Bye, everyone.
Okay.
Bye, everybody.
Or we're not recording, right? Anymore. Oh, you're on mute.
You're muted.
Oh, sorry. CTN is still an attendee, so I'm trying to see about if their recording has ended, their live recording.
I don't see the button anymore. There was like that red button. I don't see it anymore. I just wanted to touch base about center of the city thing.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Because that's going forward still.
Is it easier to call you instead?
Yeah, we can. I mean, yeah. So I just wanted you to be aware of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
From a PAC perspective, what do we need to do?
I mean, technically find someone who wants to be on it and then